Today we come to celebrate, to embrace our history, to learn of our past, and to be able to move forward in unity, knowing that we all have contributed to the greatness of this country.
All right, today's date is June 20th, 2020, and this is how the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and host, Will Buchanan. On how the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. For everybody who's watching, this is an adult podcast, which means that adult language will be used and things sometimes of a graphic nature may be shown, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, guys, welcome. Welcome back, guys. I know that we took a week off, and wow, did I miss a lot. Not miss a lot as far as what I can report on, but just a lot's happened, and I'm gonna be honest with you, the world is definitely changing. Especially the simple fact of the matter is that we can honestly, for a respite right now, Juneteenth is getting more attention than it has since its indoctrination back in 1865, which is saying a lot. But I do like the fact that Juneteenth is getting the recognition that it deserves. I do like the fact that that a lot more people now are getting a lot more educated on the fact that it is a part of African American history. It's a part of our history. The simple fact of the matter is that other people are learning more about it. And I think that's beautiful. This is why I say education as far as history, as far as knowing your story, knowing the story of your people and things of that nature is so freaking vital, because we miss out on many of the things and accomplishments that our race has provided. And that alone just speaks volumes of the simple fact now that we can celebrate we can celebrate Juneteenth. I keep on wanting to say June 19th so bad, but I love the fact that more and more of it is coming out and more of it's being celebrated. I cannot be more ecstatic about it. However, there's always going to be that one group of people that, with the coronavirus keeping us a lot back in and a lot of cities are trying to reopen, you get dumb shit like this.
To the grocery store, play dates for the kids, a backyard barbecue with friends, going to a restaurant, or getting on a plane.
Show of hands with the kids. How many of you are tired of this?
Like millions of Americans, the O'Connor family would love to get out, but they're not.
Everyone is staying home. We don't even go to the stores. We have a system now in place that we have deliveries, or we do a pickup outside of the shop.
Yeah.
We keep a bubble.
Infectious disease experts have been urging all of us to stay in our bubbles, but what are they doing? A survey of epidemiologists found 60% would go to the doctor for a non-urgent medical appointment, but just 41% would go to the hairdresser now, and only 31% would go to an outdoor picnic. Most said they'll wait a year or more before going to church, attending a funeral or a wedding where lots of people gather.
We're in it for the long haul. We're not going back to a pre-pandemic. For right now, coronavirus is circulating around the world and in the United States, and it's going to require modifications in our behaviors.
Eating indoors at a restaurant, only 16% of the epidemiologists surveyed would do that now. Most will wait 3 to 12 months.
I miss school and my friends.
Most epidemiologists would prefer to wait 3 to 12 months before sending the kids to school.
Just another chance to bring the virus home.
And something else has changed. Hugs and handshakes. 42% will wait a year. 6% say never again.
This isn't going to go away overnight. There is no magic bullet.
Only half the epidemiologists would take a driving vacation this summer. The O'Connors had one planned, but that's now on hold, and they're in self-quarantine after coming into contact with somebody now sick with COVID. Tom Costello, NBC News, Bethesda, Maryland.
Now let's think about this for a second. Now, yes, I understand that a lot of cities right now are starting to do this either phase 2 or phase 3. It is not a good idea because as of right now, there is no city out there that is ready to reopen. Even in my home state of Tennessee, which is being fundamentally stupid right now, um, wants to move forward with reopening and going to phase three, keeping the fact of the matter that we still have well over 35,000 cases of COVID 19, and that number is increasing. The majority of it focused on Middle Tennessee. Again, it is not a good time to consider any type of reopening, and yes, we have to quarantine, and yes, for a lot of people, it may suck because social butterflies love to go out and especially enjoy our tourism and our bars and things of that nature. But keep in mind, the quickest way to spread COVID 19, once again, being in large crowds. And I understand that some people argue about the fact of the protest, but again, the protest was for something different. It's actually about racial inequality and injustices. It's not about the simple fact of the matter that you can't go down to Margaritaville and have a drink. Big ass difference. Um, but for the simple fact of the matter is, the whole idea of staying home can only work if all of us do it, and if all of us wear masks, and if all of us, self quarantine at the first sign of being sick. Because trust me, I know for the simple fact of the matter is that the ICUs and most of the hospitals in downtown Nashville and surrounding areas are definitely full of COVID 19 patients. So to sit there and say that um, that's not possible for you to get sick would be very asinine and dumb thing to say. So, with that being said, we're gonna move on forward to other stuff that I was trying to cover, but I was not other stuff that I wasn't here for, but still want to cover anyway. When I saw this, I still can't believe Trump was this dumb. I mean, really, Dorito surprises me because when this happened when I was on my week off, I still can't believe it. I still can't believe he had the balls to do this. I'm just saying.
At a rally of black activists in Tulsa, Oklahoma, noticeable tension over President Trump's upcoming visit to the city, where next week he'll stage his first political rally in months. Protesters are anxious about the date Trump chose for the rally, June 19th, known as Juneteenth, the day which marks the end of slavery in the U.S.
Just knowing the comments that he makes and how he speaks to people, I just don't see it being very positive, especially not for our community.
But Senator Kamala Harris, a leading contender to be Joe Biden's running mate, is decidedly more blunt, tweeting, "This isn't just a wink to white supremacists, he's throwing them a welcome home party." The White House staunchly defending the president's choice of Tulsa and that date. His press secretary saying African Americans are, quote, very near and dear to his heart, and he wants to highlight what he's done for them.
It's a meaningful day to him, and it's a day where he wants to share some of the progress that's been made as we look forward and more that needs to be done.
But tonight, Tulsa is also reeling from the kinds of racial tensions that the president has been known to stoke. A city police major being blistered by the mayor and black leaders for his comment on a radio show this week about the rates of police shooting African Americans in Tulsa.
We're shooting African Americans about 24% less than we probably ought to be based on the crimes being committed.
The major then refused to apologize. Speaking to CNN, Travis Yates said that he meant that systemic racism in policing doesn't exist, but he said he recognized racism does exist and calls it our, quote, sin nature. He also said that he stands by his comments and added he was just quoting research. And last week, Tulsa police were criticized when they arrested a black teenager and handcuffed another for jaywalking on a street that had no sidewalks.
Well, all he was doing was jaywalking. We just want to talk with him. Then he had to act a fool like that.
It all comes against the backdrop of a horrible moment in history that Tulsa has never recovered from. In 1921, a white mob massacred hundreds of black residents of Tulsa, torched several businesses and homes in a successful African American community. The terrifying attack depicted in the HBO series Watchmen. One local African American leader believes Trump's rally will stunt Tulsa's progress in recovering from the 1921 massacre and the recent tensions.
I'm sure the president's going to say something that's going to be divisive. This is just a throw cold water on all the things we were trying to do, and put a halt to the momentum that's going.
So for the simple fact of the matter, guys, Of course, that's old because that was last week. But the idea that Dorito had the mitigated gall to sit there, not only to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, for his for his re for his if I could find words today, that'd be great. Not only was he going to Tulsa for his re-election campaign, there we go. So he went to the one spot where it was the site of the worst massacres out there. I mean, one of the actual worst. For all those that don't know, that's the reason why they say Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street was Tulsa, Oklahoma, because it in itself was its own city. It had churches, banks, it had bakeries, it had grocery stores. It was pretty much a self-sustaining society of successful African Americans. And as history doesn't like to say, that much like Native Americans, some white people wanted to come in and pretty much destroy it and take what was theirs. They looted, they burned down, they killed people. And I think it's kind of funny now that we flash forward to the present where the minorities are looting and destruction of property, and the descendants of ancestors are telling us, well, that's not helping anybody. Yeah, right. So I just found that very interesting. Even more so how tone deaf the president is, because he always loves to say, I have a very great relationship with the blacks. He always loves to say that. No, you don't. And this is the part where the next part of this that I'm about to show, well, actually, show next after the next segment, is where I still question some people as why do they vote for Trump. That is the thing that has always amazed me the most. But before I get to that segment, I want to play this segment, and it's going to be kind of quick. Where, earlier this week, Dorito changed his mind. I'm only assuming that a lot of people had to convince him not to do the rally on Juneteenth. He'll still do the rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but I cannot believe that, let me take that back. I shouldn't sit there and say that. What I should say basically is, I expect this comment out of him.
Interview to the Wall Street Journal in which he says he made Juneteenth famous, that, quote, nobody had ever heard of it before. Juneteenth, of course, commemorates the end of slavery in the U.S. And as you know, he rescheduled his Tulsa rally because of backlash against holding it on that date amid racial tensions in the nation, especially in a city where a racist massacre in 1921 left the once prosperous black district burned to the ground, more than 10,000 of the black residents there homeless, and an estimated 300 dead. Let's bring in Wall Street Journal White House reporter Michael Bender. So, Michael.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop right there because they're just going to go with the reason of trying to explain why he said it. He literally sat there and said, quote, I did something good. I made Juneteenth very famous. It's actually an important event, an important time, but nobody has ever heard of it. Okay, let me break down the sentence structure of that bullshit. First off, you sure as shit didn't make Juneteenth famous. And I love the fact that he goes, it's actually an important event, an important time, but nobody's ever heard of it. This is why whenever you hear Dorito speaking, you always want to hear the first sentence and then the second sentence and then the third sentence. Because the first sentence is going to be bullshit. The second sentence is also going to be bullshit. The third one is just going to confuse the shit out of you. And I cannot believe he sat there and said that. But then again, I should also not be surprised because he's used to bullshitting. He's a con artist. So the simple fact of the matter is just that you made Juneteenth famous? No, sir. I will not give you that credit. I will give you the credit that you made white supremacy feel comfortable at home. You made those who support the KKK. You made those who support Nazis. You made those who support Aryanism. You made it easier for those guys to feel comfortable in their own skin, especially with that one Tulsa police chief that sat there and said, he tried to quote statistics saying the police are shooting African Americans. We should be really shooting them more. And I'm like, whoa, statistics have never sat there and said, well, we actually need to shoot them more. No, that would be completely asinine. So the simple fact of the matter is, like I said, it's amazing how he says, well, there's no systemic racism in law enforcement, but racism exists. And it doesn't help that you're white. It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't. For optic standpoints, it doesn't help that you're white. You're gonna sit there and say, "Well, there's no systemic racism in law enforcement." Really? Did we not just have a couple of stories that have came out where officers are being held to a higher standard and officers are resigning? Most officers are walking off the force. Hell, in Atlanta, you just had officers not responding to calls. You know, the whole thing of being held to a higher standard, and you have officers who are walking off the job or not responding to first responder calls. Now, here's the thing. If you're being held to a standard, you're supposed to do your job. You know, like teachers. Teachers get cut down multiple times and still asked to do their jobs. You tell the police to do the same thing, and they're like, "How do we do this?" And teachers will say, like, I wish a teacher would go, "Oh, you dear child, come here, let me show you the way." That's how it should be. But again, it's just amazing to me how Dorito is literally taking this election campaign. But in the ways of threes, there's also something else a lot of Trump supporters, which they were going to the campaign to rally to do, which again, with COVID-19 out there, they're also telling you that, hey, we're going to have you sign a waiver so you can attend this, so you can't sue us. But, you know, show your support for Dorito. And let's just be honest, if I was Tulsa, Oklahoma right now, I would be getting out.
Spike in COVID-19 cases comes as crowds line up early for President Trump's first rally in months.
I've wanted to come to one all my life. I'm 68 years old, and here I am.
Rosie Matlock will be camping in her chair till Saturday, one of the 20,000 supporters expected to pack BOK Arena.
I'm as concerned about the virus as I am about every yearly flu.
But new numbers show a 100% spike in Tulsa cases in just the past week. A stat commissioner Karen Keith says is about to get worse.
If you had President Trump in front of you right now, what do you tell him?
I would beg him as our national leader to call this off.
The president's campaign promising temperature checks and masks, but no requirement just yet to actually wear them.
And we're taking care of them, and we know what the high risk means, but largely it means older people, especially older people, senior citizens.
I am concerned. I really am, but I really wanted to see this man speak.
And tonight, due to that spike in cases, the BOK Center's now formally requested the Trump campaign provide a plan on how to socially distance come Saturday.
Now, that alone is a scary-ass thought, isn't it? I know COVID-19 exists, but I'm going to come see President Trump. I'm going to come support my president. Forget the fact that I actually might get sick, but I'm going to see my president. That's what I'm going to do. It is amazing to me the level of just, you know, I used to say, I said it once and I'll say it again. I used to say how did Jim Jones, how did Charles Manson, how did most mega pastors these days have these cults of people that follow them blindly. And it just, I can't say it no more. I used to question it. Now I get it. There must be something, and I keep on saying this. There has to be something. Well, actually, I know what it is. The simple fact of the matter is that that's their fantasy. For a lot of people, Dorito is the fantasy. A guy who can talk shit, a guy who will talk so much shit, faces no consequences, does what he wants, and pretty much just gives the middle finger at the modern establishment. But again, it makes no sense that these are the same people that will vote against their own interests, shoot themselves in the foot and reload. And again, like I said, with the rally that's happening later today, I just wouldn't be surprised if Dorito goes through his greatest hits. The crowd is mostly white, and yet there will not be anybody wearing a mask. Again, and we wonder why we never will get rid of COVID. At this point, getting rid of COVID-19 is so beyond us right now. It's only because we are still sitting here and being in these large crowds, especially like a rally. And it's amazing to me that now all they're going to do is kick up COVID-19 because, like I said before, there are still vaccine tests going on, but anybody who's ever followed science journals, things of that nature, every vaccine a vaccine can take up to a year or more. A year is being optimistic. 2 years is honestly having a solid plan. 3 or 4 years seems like the norm. Vaccines don't come any faster than that. So again, you would think by now we will be doing a lot better as far as taking care of ourselves and avoiding social distancing or using masks. I understand handmade masks or scarves is probably best right now because trying to order a mask from anywhere is going to be few, far, and in between. I understand that. But, you know, there's always homemade masks and scarves that you can wear as well, and just go that route. So, just saying. When you say, Alex, almost certain that at least 80% of those idiots will be ate up with the run within the next 2 weeks. You're right. I'm not even going to argue with that one. You're absolutely right. But even more so is just that, like I said, going back to what I said earlier about individuals that voted for Dorito. I always like watching these segments because, you know, they kind of have like a, I voted for him then, let's see how you're affected now. And I love this segment just because I want to see the perspective from three men, and they all voted for Dorito, and I just want to see their response now. And I know that either it's going to annoy me or I'm just going to be in shock. Let's find out.
In the industrial heartland of Ohio,
how are you?
Scott Seitz is a lifelong Democrat who voted Republican for the first time in 2016. And along with his three sons, he helped to put Donald Trump in office. Nearly 4 years ago, this is how he explained his vote.
There's two different ways to look at some of the things that he said that really hurt a lot of people's feelings on a racial line. One is to say, well, if he said it, I like it and I'm voting for him because of it. Why didn't it make you vote against him?
Because we hear it and we crumble it up and we throw it away and doesn't allow us to make our general decisions on what we're going to do to provide for our family. Mm-hmm. We completely ignore that crap, that garbage, and we see what he has to provide for us outside of that.
This is Scott today.
Do you think he's done a good job with this protest movement coming out of these police problems?
Well, I think he handled it like an arrogant businessman that he is, showing a lack of compassion for people, and what he did out in front of the church and making those folks move with smoke bombs and tear gas or whatever it was, just so he can get to that vista and have that shot of that him and holding that Bible up. That was about the last straw for a lot of folks.
From Ohio to Michigan, which also helped to elect Trump. Just before the president took office, I met Leslie Curtis. He is a lifelong Republican who voted for Obama in 2008 and Trump in 2016.
What did Obama do to disappoint you in the first term so you wouldn't vote for him again?
Well, the disappointment came when he didn't address Black America. To me, his agenda was focused directly on the LGBT community and immigration and Obamacare. Whenever you're the first Black anything, you have to put it out there on the line. And I don't feel that Obama did that.
Today, Leslie approves of President Trump's handling of this crisis.
Is it your view that we've got a serious problem in terms of law enforcement and how they treat African Americans, or do you think it's overblown? I mean, how do you see it?
I've had the opportunity to witness Black and white police officers abusing their power. So I don't say that it's so much a systemic issue overall, but I think it's a bad cop issue. Of course, what happened to George Floyd was a tragedy. It was sad. As a Black man, it's hard to watch things like that and not have some type of emotion about it. And when you say it's systemic, it takes the responsibility away from the individual who committed the crime.
On to West Virginia, coal country. Just after President Trump took office, I met Alan Lardieri. He is a proud veteran and a coal miner.
You got people here hanging by a thread, and they're putting their faith in Donald Trump. They're down to nothing. Their jobs are gone. Their pensions are gone. Their health care isn't there. They're trying to push that opioid away. They see a man who's supposed to be for them. Tell the president speak for them to this president.
Mr. President, you're the most unconventional candidate that has ever took this office. In your own words, if you do not deliver, you're fired.
Alan, today.
What's your verdict? Has he delivered or is he fired?
He's delivered as much as he's been allowed to deliver, we'll just say that much.
How do you think President Trump has handled the protest movement that's come up this summer?
I think he's handled fine. I think what he's done has been proportionate.
Everyone
and he said that he supports protest. What the president and myself and many others do not support is when somebody hijacks a lawful protest and turns it into some of the things that you've been seeing playing out at night.
In November, Allen says he will be voting for Trump. Leslie? Do you still support President Trump today?
Yeah, of course I do.
Even Scott? If the election were held tomorrow and it was Biden versus Trump, who do you vote for?
Trump.
You vote for Trump right now.
I dislike Biden that much and don't feel he's going to lead our country. I only support him about 10%. Trump's only about 25%.
3 states, 3 voters, but 1 candidate they all still support.
What the fuck? There is no. Again, this is why I like watching these, because again, I would think this is your moment. This is your moment to say, yeah, I fucked up. Yeah, I shouldn't have voted for the guy. Yeah, I voted against my own interests. What you actually saw right there, was number 1, pride. Number 2, rationalization. You know what that is? That is like if the Joker was a real person and the Joker was voted into office and the Joker turned around and sat there and said, above all else, I'm going to burn down these hospitals. We don't need them anymore. And you would see the people go like, oh dear God, no, we need those hospitals, Joker. We don't want you to burn them down. But in reality, when someone asks him about it, well, he's doing his best as what he can do or what he's allowed. Not to mention the simple fact of the matter is just that you're voting against your own interests. Against your own interests. If you notice within all 3 of those guys, there was not a positive outcome for either all 3 of them. They all dealt with something that Doritos' current administration is handling, which tells you that yes, they are affected along the lines of each of these people. But again, when the question comes up, which is still funny to me, would you vote for him again? Yes. If I was Van Jones and CNN, I would just be rubbing my head. Just, you're a glutton for punishment, huh? You just like punishment. But again, like I said before, I used to question how cult leaders got people to follow them, and now I don't anymore. So, with that being said, guys, also another thing I've also noticed, Amy Klobuchar, for some odd reason, because she didn't make it as a presidential candidate, has decided that she wants to drop out of the Biden the Biden VP, if I can find words today, that'd be great, out of the Biden vice president contention. And she also says something that we have also been saying here, how the Frack We Got Here for so long, that Biden needs to do. And it's kind of funny that it came from her, of all people, an original thought. Who knew?
Taking herself out of the running for VP and giving Joe Biden a suggestion for his choice.
After what I've seen in my state, what I've seen across the country, this is a historic moment, and America must seize on this moment. And I truly believe, as I actually told the vice president last night when I called him, that I think this is a moment to put a woman of color on that ticket.
Is she right?
Well, according to big portions of the party, she's right. And this is going to increase pressure on Joe Biden. I think it's important to know the couple things here. Senator Klobuchar didn't just say, oh, I don't want to be in the race anymore. Using that public reasoning, she adds pressure on people like Elizabeth Warren, like Gretchen Whitmer, who are white women who are still in the running. And they are going to be now forced to answer questions saying, well, why should you be the vice presidential pick if he has a number of women of color who are good options, as Senator Klobuchar stated. But she had taken a hit in her VP push in the last month. As the senator from Minnesota, she had faced questions on her prosecutor record. But this has honestly been an issue that has followed her for the last year. Her presidential campaign also stalled after New Hampshire as we moved towards the diverse states, and she could not match the kind of appeal that she had to some of those white moderates. There really isn't a path for Democrats, particularly on the national.
Okay, I just had to cut him off because he was just going to strategism. So Amy Klobuchar, well, he is right. She had about as much appeal as a jar of mayonnaise, so we really shouldn't be surprised by that. I do love the fact that she did say the one thing that needs to be echoed. That yes, it is all but certain now that Biden will get the Democratic nomination. However, with that being said, his vice president is his VP pick is going to be one of great importance. And I've been saying this since Joe was bound to get the nomination from Sanders. His vice president needs to be a woman of color. Because Joe used to ride on the I was with the black guy for 8 years train, and a lot of people right now aren't feeling that. So again, Joe has to come out and sit there and say, okay, how do I show that we're being how do I show that we're being progressive? How do I show that I am trying to bridge that gap, that divide? Because Joe will always sit there and go on his record, but we've heard him say his record all throughout his career. Now it becomes a point of action, and a woman of color is needed. I never, it's better. I keep on wanting to say he needs a black woman. He does. Unfortunately, Michelle Obama is not available, and I wouldn't ask her to. That woman has done more as a first lady than most presidents have done their full 2 terms. So I'm not even going to ask for Mrs. Obama. She can be on vacation and live her life how she wants to. However, there are a couple of choices out there. Actually, in my mind, there's only one choice. I mean, yes, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris could be considered VP, but the problem with Kamala Harris is she never did defend her prosecution record back in California, where she put more minorities behind bars than anybody else. She's never stood on her record. She's always tried to deflect it, always tried to rationalize it, but never sat there and said, yes, I put more minorities in prison than what I should have done. She won't own up to it. So the only person I can think of at this time that would actually be the best choice for Biden, honestly, is Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams right now should be the governor of Georgia, but Brian Kemp with that entire voting record actually fucked all that up for him, and his ass should actually be in jail. But again, Stacey Abrams should be considered a pick for VP. Not only for the simple fact of the matter is that she does have the right ideas, and as far as policy things that she wants to put forth, especially as far as voting and doing away with the Electoral College, it just makes more sense to me that Biden needs to go ahead and confirm her as VP. Nothing against Elizabeth Warren. I still think Elizabeth Warren, in my mind, honestly, I want to see her as president one day. I want to see her as president one day because she will rock both sides of the boat, Democratic and Republican. But at this moment, with the current Congress put in place, it'll just be hard to see that. And also another note, Kentucky. Your primary is coming up. Kentucky. I cannot stress that enough. I know Amy McGrath is doing wondrous strides down there, and I know a third person is near the ring. But Kentucky, please do us all a favor. You have one chance to get rid of Mitch McConnell. Let's send Turtle Mitch, let's send Moscow Mitch packing. Kentucky, I've never asked anything of you short of Kentucky Kingdom and bourbon, but now is the time where we need y'all to avenge her up and get him out of office, because he is basically Trump's personal wall. And I'm not trying to get on my soapbox about it, but I'm asking you, I am pleading with you, Kentucky, do us all a favor. Cut the head off the snake. That's all I'm asking. So, but speaking of states, apparently my home state of Tennessee has already been back in the news again. I like to call Tennessee progressively backwards because that's unfortunately what my state is. And this week is honestly no surprise as far as the state legislature and what they push forward.
That's going to help save some lives. It also has a unique amendment that we put on there, and that is going to be that if somebody has a pill to have an abortion, they can have another pill to reverse that if they do it right away. So I think that's a very good amendment that we put on that bill.
And here we go. It was presented on the floor and it passed. And so I expect that several groups will file lawsuits in the coming days. And unfortunately, Tennessee will join that very narrow list of states that have passed unconstitutional abortion bills.
Yep, you've heard, ladies and gentlemen. Tennessee passes a 6-week abortion ban, which puts a restrictive ban. And of course, they said a ban. They said, now here's the reason why abortion is still, for some odd reason, is still, I don't know why. And I know for a lot of you people who are for life right now, I like to call y'all for bullshit. But for those who are for life, you're probably gonna hate exactly what I'm about to say right now. Because I've always sat there and said this about abortion. Abortion is not a hard subject. It is a simple subject. A woman's body is her choice. She can do whatever she wants. The choices and consequences are ultimately hers. Oh dear God, how hard is that? It's a simple concept. If a woman gets pregnant, she can decide whether or not she wants to keep the child or terminate the child or terminate the pregnancy. It's not that hard, folks. The problem is just that with Tennessee now saying that abortions can be banned as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy. Now, for all those that don't understand it, a lot of women don't know or don't consider themselves pregnant or don't check to see if they're pregnant until it's been about 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks, actually. So when a woman discovers she's pregnant and she might be 6 weeks along, according to this law, she cannot have an abortion outside of the fact that if it endangers her life. This is where these pro-lifers, and this is where a lot of these politicians love to stick on that word, stick on that very sentence. If the mother's life is in danger. Also, the one thing about this bill, which they did not say in this, the bill also sat there and said that in cases of rape or incest, it does not qualify for an abortion. Think about that. The bill itself, and by our own governor, idiot Bill Lee, sat there and said, oh, this current bill that was just passed in the state House of Representatives and the state Senate does not have exceptions for rape or incest, but only if the patient's life is at risk. Okay, you for life people is always amazing to me, and sometimes it is based on religious groups. You know, well, someone's got to speak for the life of the child. It's amazing that these people can just get pregnant and they can terminate life. Yeah. So if you're so hung up on life, why don't you go down to the Tennessee? Why don't you go down to the Tennessee Child Services and see how many kids are still in orphanages, foster homes? There are still hundreds of thousands of children, especially in Tennessee, who could use a home. But if you're such a bleeding heart, why don't you go down there and actually adopt one? Oh, but they're born. And a lot of things, and I said, I hate to say this about you for lifers, but that's the truth. You care about a child until they're born. And once they're born, they're on their own. George Carlin said it best. He sat there and said, you for lifers only care in 2 instances of a child's life. When they're born and when they're old enough to be enlisted in the armed forces. That's it. Between those 2 parts and afterward, you can care less. So again, let me also point out that this law, this measure, this bill that Tennessee passed, what a lot of people don't understand, Roe versus Wade is still the law of the land. It is still the law of the land. Nothing has changed from it. The Supreme Court has still held it up. They have not yet to hear a rebuttal to that law. So any state that actually tries to put anything forward will always wind up being in court because Roe versus Wade is the law of the land. No matter how many times the state tries to put up measures against it, every fetal heartbeat bill they try to put up there systemically will be destroyed. It amazes me, the simple fact of the matter is just that how far we've come to where, again, a woman cannot have choices over. A woman should have choice over her own body, and that should be it. There's no rebuttal. A woman's body is her choice. Because I'll be honest with you, I had a very simple, and yet people call me crazy for saying this. If people are such against women being aborted, but have no problem with a man depositing. They have no problems with a man depositing into multiple women and getting them pregnant, and you see no reason to fix the man. Why do you have a reason to fix the woman? Oh, because you simply want to basically allow the man to do whatever she wants, but allow the man to do whatever he wants, but you want to limit the woman just because of life. Keep in mind, I've said it best. I could argue this, but science has already said it. Conception of life starts the day of your birth. It doesn't start when you are just a mix of DNA inside of a human being. Argue with science, but then again, that's what religion does. What'd you say? I feel like Cat Williams. Let's take a break from presidents for a while, and this is Kentucky we're talking about. No, Vaughn, we shouldn't take a break. We honestly should move forward. And I actually want to believe in Kentucky, because I think now with Kentucky, there are some areas that maybe they are just fed up. I want to give Kentucky that chance. What do you say, Kelly? She takes pride in her record of black men across bars, behind bars. Yeah, Kamala Harris does. The group player is the only good thing to come from the Kentucky. No, it isn't. Have you heard of bourbon? Alex, not only is this a secret abortion ban, but if they happen to be within the allowed window, and they do want to pursue abortion, law forces the doctors to do an ultrasound and shame the woman. Yep, you're exactly right, Alex. That they shame the woman into seeing the ultrasound of the child and try to body shame her into keeping the baby. You're exactly right. And that again, body shaming is another thing that just amazes me so, that how in the world this is not questioned and challenged and struck down for moral reasons. But again, what can I say about Tennessee? Progressively backwards. Anyway, speaking of progressive, Ben & Jerry's has well, if you don't know Ben & Jerry's by now, number one, ice cream is awesome. Number two, their stance on a lot of things. A lot of people have been calling out these businesses for supporting black businesses and Juneteenth and African American and minority groups. And don't get me wrong, the times are changing, and that's beautiful. And some people sit there and say, well, businesses are just jumping on it and trying to make money off of it. Okay, yeah, I can see that too. But the thing about Ben & Jerry's that makes them so different is that they've been doing it. They have been doing it since their inception. They've actually done it during the same-sex marriages. They've done it during LGBTQ rights. They've done it during trans rights. They've done it during identity and non-binary and things of that nature. They've always stood up for something whenever it came to subjects. They were a business that was not silent. And in this area of Juneteenth, Ben & Jerry's does something that I never thought that I would hear from an actual business.
Jerry's have never been afraid of standing up for what they see as right, but you have produced a 4-point plan as a company that you want to see enacted. The first talks about you want bolder action from President Trump to condemn what you view as white supremacy in the United States. But the second thing caught my attention too, the cost paid by black and brown people in America in redress. What do you mean by redress?
Thanks very much for having me. This topic is not new, to your point, for Ben & Jerry's. Back in 2016, we were on record in supporting a Black Lives Matter, and I think it flows from the values that Jerry and Ben have built into our business. And on this point about reparations, I think that can be a scary topic for a lot of white Americans. I know when I first heard the term reparations, I had an immediate reaction of, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. But to be blunt, the white America needs to get over its trepidations about the damage that has been caused to Black America and people of color through the systems and the structures in our country that are frankly racist. And that may be hard for some people to hear, but the same way that gender equity is not a problem for women to solve, a white supremacy culture is something that white people have to own. And that includes business people, where so much of the economic engine of our country lies. We as business people have to be part of the solution and not delegate that to government or others.
We have to be able to have the conversation. Do you think, to use your term, white America can get over it? And do businesses have to be prepared to lose customers through taking a stand if they won't get over it?
This moment is an incredibly painful one in our country, and it's the killing of George Floyd and many others by white people. This is not new, and so the short answer is white America has to be part of the solution. That's the only way we're going to move forward to actually unlock the promise that America can be. America is an incredible country. It's a great place, and it needs to be made better. White people need to lead that, myself included, a white male of a lot of privilege in my life. And the second part of your question is absolutely yes. Business. And we run a business at Ben & Jerry's, and we sell ice cream. And we need to do more at Ben & Jerry's. And I think all business leaders create economic opportunity through their entire system. White supremacy, structural racism exists everywhere. And I think that may be difficult for some people to get their heads around. The bigger part of the iceberg of racism in America is not the part over the water. It's the part underneath. It's the structures. It's the systems that very often we as white people, myself included, don't actually understand.
There we go. So it is so like I said, with Ben & Jerry's actually coming forward, and again, this is nothing new. This is honestly nothing new if you've ever followed Ben & Jerry's before, especially during the Chick-fil-A battle that they had. I like the fact of what he said. He sat there and said there needs to be regression. I'm like, oh, that's just the word for reparations. And trust me, that word has been thrown around quite a lot with reparations. And I like the fact that a company has just sat there and said, yeah, we need to talk about that. We need to talk about some of the fact of the matter is that we have had a 400+ year head start, and they have not. At the same time, he talks about the fact of that conversation needs to be had, that business needs to take a stand and go from there. And I expect that from Ben & Jerry's. I've never not seen them give a point of view or an opinion on a very highly subject. So again, with this going forward, I just love the fact that he actually talked about it and sat there and said, keep in mind, for all those that watched Ben & Jerry's, on the comment that they made before where they said white supremacy needs to be taken down, and they start naming off the names of those who have been killed, that alone tells you that somebody over on Ben & Jerry's, or maybe the entire organization, is honestly more informed and more about it than most corporations. That's saying a lot. But speaking of saying a lot, this also happened this week, and I'm going to be honest, I never thought I'd see this day happen.
Face at breakfast for more than a century will soon be a thing of the past. Quaker Oats, which is owned by Pepsi, announcing that they're getting rid of the 130-year-old Aunt Jemima brand, famous for pancake mixes, maple syrup, and other breakfast foods.
Aunt Jemima buckwheat pancakes. They're good.
The company says by the end of this year, its packaging will no longer feature the controversial Aunt Jemima image, and soon they will completely change the brand's name altogether.
It's time to let go of symbols like this because of how weighted they are and what they represent.
Cornell University's Dr. Rashay Richardson recently wrote a New York Times article, "Can we please finally get rid of Aunt Jemima?"
Children, going with their parents to the grocery store can still see images, this retrograde image of Black womanhood on store shelves. And it's an image that harkens back to the antebellum plantation. It's rooted in plantation. Aunt Jemima is that kind of stereotype that is premised on this idea of Black inferiority and otherness.
Posts blasting the image's negative stereotypes flooding social media.
Let me fix you some breakfast. Aunt Jemima!
This video posted Monday receiving more than 1 million views.
Did you know the founder, Chris Rutt, a white man, got the name after attending a minstrel show? Think blackface. Not today. Black Lives Matter, people. Even over breakfast.
In a statement to NBC News, Quaker Oats writing in part, "We recognize Aunt Jemima's origins are based on a racial stereotype. While work has been done over the years to update the brand in a manner intended to be appropriate and respectful, we realize those changes are not enough." In the wake of nationwide protests and growing calls for equality, many companies are facing increased scrutiny about similar logos that some find racist and offensive. Professor Richardson says big brands like NASCAR banning the Confederate flag is a good start, but that there is still plenty of work to do.
It is urgent to expunge our public spaces of a lot of these symbols that, for some people are triggering and represent terror and abuse.
On Monday, Quaker Oats parent company Pepsi announced a $400 million set of initiatives over 5 years to lift up Black communities and increase Black representation at Pepsi. In addition, the company says the Aunt Jemima brand will donate $5 million to create meaningful support and engagement in the Black community. Guys?
Guys, says a lot, doesn't it? That a lot of people right now, I knew about it because, like I said, I was fortunate enough to have those who know our history, know our story, tell me about Aunt Jemima, and the fact that, yes, that is true. The creator or CEO at the time did go to a minstrel show, and that's where he got the idea for it. You know what else came out of those minstrel shows that people had the idea for? Uncle Ben's rice, cream of wheat with the black chef. And there are many more out there. Mrs. Butterworth also came from a minstrel show. And again, this whole idea, guys, is where a lot of this, where it comes from, is based off, unfortunately, racial stereotypes. Now, I do love the fact that they're trying to redo the brands and remove the faces and things of that nature. There needs to be more, honestly. I mean, I love when they say we're gonna take initiatives. Here's the idea. Instead of taking initiatives to do things over 5 years, here's an idea. How about you take that same money and invest in education towards schools? Mainly put to making sure that they are they educated properly, especially about their history. Why don't you take that same money that you were going to put toward changing the program of your companies to putting that toward minority businesses and actually bringing them up and giving them a leg up in the competition? Why don't you take that very same money and actually put it forward toward minorities, communities, and things of that nature, giving them the things like, parks, better water, better living conditions, things of that nature. Instead of you changing your company from within, why not change the environment around you? I'm just saying, if you got that kind of money to throw around, do the one things that most local governments won't do for their cities. That shows me that you're about change versus you saying, we're going to change our company from the inside out and we're going to hope that makes you happy. No. I want you to do more than that. I mean, Lord knows how much money you've made off the images from a minstrel show. Now it's time for you to pay back what you owe, personally. But again, change is happening, folks. This is why I sit there and say, for all those that don't understand protest and looting, things change because of the violence that happens from that. So for us to sit there and say, well, you shouldn't have to loot, you shouldn't have to protest, you shouldn't have to riot, you shouldn't do any of this stuff. If I hear that from a white person, I'm gonna sit there and say, did anyone tell you about Tulsa, Oklahoma? Because it seems your folks did the same thing first. And let's not also forget the Trail of Tears. No Native American has forgotten that. So, for a group of people out there that sit there and say that riots and protesting, looting is the incorrect way, we're gonna direct you to the history of your ancestors. Aside from that, guys, there is some news, unfortunately, that has actually happened over the weekend. Over the past week. And there is just, I'm just going to play it.
Young Black man who was found hanging from a tree. The initial finding of suicide alarmed the community. Some fear the Wednesday death in Palmdale, some 60 miles north of Los Angeles, could be foul play. CBS's Jonathan Vigliotti reports.
And I also ask that we stop talking about lynchings.
At a contentious press briefing, residents in the LA County city of Palmdale demanded an independent investigation into the death of Robert Fuller. The 24-year-old was found hanging from a tall tree branch early Wednesday morning in a public square across from City Hall. Investigators didn't say if a ladder was found nearby.
We were sitting here staring at this tree. It don't make no sense.
right?
Fuller's sister, Diamond Alexander, along with activists, now demanding answers after they say the sheriff's department rushed to conclusions. For example, in one release, officials said it appears Mr. Fuller tragically committed suicide, even though homicide detectives were still investigating. A second statement released by the city linked Fuller's death to COVID-19 related depression, reading, "Sadly, it's not the first such incident since the COVID-19 pandemic began." But Fuller's sister said he wasn't depressed.
Robert was a good little brother to us. We've been hearing one thing, then we hear another. And we just want to know the truth.
It's the second recent hanging death of a black man in the area. On May 31st, after a night of George Floyd protests, Malcolm Harsh was found hanging from a tree in neighboring San Bernardino County. Officials said there are no signs of foul play, but said detectives were still investigating the cause and manner of death. Meanwhile, demands for an investigation into Fuller's death have gained national attention after tweets by both Senator Kamala Harris and Kim Kardashian went viral. Palmdale officials are now calling for an independent investigation and autopsy. Jonathan Bigley.
I mean, it's hard to listen to, and it's hard to see that in 2020, that in the midst of us, as far as racial tensions, and explain the simple fact of the matter that there's still a systemic racism in our country, that somewhere along the lines, somebody had in their heads to go ahead and
Micah, sure, people gathered in both.
That alone tells me a lot. Not even more so that's just one of 4 cases. There was actually 2 more cases I wasn't able to find video on, but think about that. 4 people were hanged in about less than 11 days. There's been 4 cases of lynching, and it's racial. It is racial. For black people, when we see a rope over a tree, that you can't help but feel some type of way. Even more so where in 2020, there's still somebody or some group out there that is hanging people. Even more so how it was actually ruled, oh, well, it was a suicide, or this was depression linked to COVID-19. Here's the thing I'm going to go ahead and say it until I'm proven wrong. I've never seen a black person get hanged because I've never seen a black person hang themselves, and I've never seen a black person get so depressed with COVID-19 that hanging themselves was an option. I'm just saying. Like, until that's actually proven otherwise, I just don't believe that. Honestly, I think that's bullshit. And I hope that the families do get justice for this, but it amazes me so that lynching is still happening. And I shouldn't be surprised because, like I said, as I was watching those videos, I was suddenly reminded why I don't go camping. I say I don't go camping just because we have civilization now. I feel no need to go out in the woods when I have a perfectly good home I can come to with electricity and running water and plumbing and all that stuff. But as I'm watching this video, I know the reason. There is another reason why I don't go camping. I don't like being under trees that kind of give me that idea that I could be hanging from one of them. And that alone when that thought crossed my mind, I couldn't sit there. I was like, is that probably the basis why I don't go camping, is just because of that fear? And keep in mind, the fear. Not the paranoia, the fear that I could be on that tree. And that alone should sit there and say, for a lot of people, it's like, why I don't go camping? I don't want to be a victim. Or, in my case, whoever tries to hang me, you either gonna be right there beside me or you ain't walking away whole. One of the two. But that's why I said the whole thing being ruled a suicide. Keep in mind, they just tried with a guy who was killed right in front of our eyes. They just tried with George Floyd to sit there and say that the knee across that Derek Chauvin's knee across his neck did not attribute to his death. They just tried to sit there and say that he did not die by asphyxiation. The man died right in front of us, and the coroner at the time was about to rule that no, the officer's knee on his neck did not cause his death. And it took an independent autopsy to turn around and sit there and say, yes, it did. He did die by asphyxiation. because of the simple fact of the matter is he couldn't fucking breathe. Hence why now I'm going to be just as that to me makes me more aware of how they view our deaths. Even more so when I see lynching and immediately like, oh no, it's not a hate crime. They did it to themselves. Not to say it's not possible, but right now it's in the highly unlikely category. But aside from that, there is also other news in the Breonna Taylor case, which I have mixed feelings about, but I'll let you guys make up your mind for yourselves.
Metro Police Department is firing one of the 3 police officers involved in Breonna Taylor's death. A termination letter was issued today to Detective Brett Hankinson. The Louisville police chief wrote in the letter that Hankinson, quote, displayed an extreme indifference to the value of human life when he fired 10 times into Breonna Taylor's apartment during an execution of a no-knock warrant. Taylor was shot 8 times while she slept. This is the first significant action taken in this case after widespread protests. And remember, Breonna Taylor died before George Floyd. This was a couple of months ago that this took place. Demonstrators want to see charges brought against the officers involved. The other 2 officers involved in the shooting have been placed on administration reassignment.
Okay, so for all those who don't remember Breonna Taylor, she was a young woman in which 4 officers entered in a no-knock warrant into the wrong house, claiming it was a drug raid and that they shot her while she slept. Her boyfriend, who was up and thought they were being broken into, shot the officers. And keep in mind, remember, he was arrested and was charged with attempted murder of a law enforcement officer, in which after the DA looked at it, immediately dropped the cases and had released her boyfriend. The thing that annoys me more about this is that when they say fired doesn't sound like you're being brought up on charges. And that's why I said the whole thing about being fired. It's just that when I hear fired, that isn't satisfying. Well, the cop's gonna be fired. No, he needs to be brought up on charges. I mean, think about it. You're a law enforcement officer who has all the ability to check the warrant, to check the location, to scope everything out, and yet none of that was followed. It was criminal negligence of the highest standard, and that the loss of life was too much. And yet, the one thing that this city has done so far is fire the officer who probably fired the kill shot. Again, this is the reason why I turn around and I sit there and say it's not enough. I'm like, all 3 officers, just like on the previous cases, just like with George Floyd, all the officers there are being charged. Now, I understand, for a lot of people, I'm the same way, officers get charged with these deaths all the time. But there's never the amount of justice we deserve. Do I believe that officers should be put to death? In certain situations, yes. If you sat there and shot a person with absolute prejudice, then yes, you should be charged with death penalty, or you should be charged life in prison, preferably with those that know that you're a cop. Personally, but again, the whole idea of him being fired, it just doesn't sit well. It's almost like saying you can't be a cop anymore, but you still have your freedom. That just, it bugs me so. That's about the best way I can put that. And I think more needs to be done, more should be done, but I think it just honestly bugs me that the only action they've done is fire him. Now they said he was fired and he was brought up on charges. Okay, at least in the court, he can actually be tried. Hopefully giving him a better sentence than Amber Geiger, because I still haven't forgiven Dallas for that, Houston for that shit. Only gave her 10 years and she was in the wrong apartment for Jump Street. But aside from that, also another death has happened over the past week. And again, for all those that don't know the Rashard Brooks story, keep in mind he was a guy that was sleeping in a Wendy's parking lot. The officers pretty much approached him, and then they, I guess after some heated conversation, they tried to tase him. He took said taser, tried to run with it. The officers used lethal force and shot him. And then at the end of it all, they still stood on top of his shoulders after the kill shot. And that alone sparked debate, because keep in mind, this is a heavy ass comparison to Dylan Roof. Keep in mind, Dylan Roof shot inside of a black church and killed 9 people. And they turned around and treated that kid like a kid, and damn near got him food from Burger King after all said and done. And I always thought this was, and I love this comparison on Facebook where it sat there and said, if police can take a white supremacist killer and take him alive, and even take him to Burger King afterwards, there is no reason why officers cannot treat Rashard Brooks the same way. But anyway, that's the backstory on it. But here's actually the breaking news on it so far.
Surrendering to officials, former Atlanta police officer Garrett Rolfe and Officer Devin Brosnan.
I have full faith in the criminal justice system.
Brosnan charged with aggravated assault, breaking his silence with his attorney on MSNBC after posting bail.
I think this is a tragic event, and it's totally a total tragedy that a man had to lose his life that night.
Brosnan's lawyer denying that his client failed to provide first aid and stood on Brooks' shoulders.
It is preposterous and it is not true, and all you got to do is look at the video.
An attorney for Rolfe, charged with felony murder, says his actions were justified.
I'm kind of getting tired of people saying that Mr. Brooks was running away. Mr. Brooks was not running away. Mr. Brooks turned and offered extreme violence towards a uniformed law enforcement officer.
Around Atlanta, as the charges came down, some officers walking off the job in protest, others going radio silent, according to a union leader.
We are not answering 911 calls right now due to personnel issues.
Were those charges a breaking point for some officers?
Oh, absolutely. And I would say not some, I would say the majority of the officers in the city of Atlanta.
The Atlanta Police Department said they're experiencing a higher than usual number of call-outs, but denied that multiple officers from each zone walked off the job, adding they are able to respond effectively to 911 calls. Last Friday, 2 of Officer Rolfe's gunshots went into Brooks's back, a third hitting this SUV, according to the DA. The people inside visiting from Tennessee.
We come to Atlanta to try to conquer our dreams, not witness no murders.
And tonight, we are hearing from Brooks himself in this newly released interview from February with the organization Reconnect. He talks about his previous run-ins with the criminal justice system.
If you do some things that's wrong, you pay your debts to society, and that's the bottom line. The system could, look at us as individuals. We do have lives, it's just a mistake we made, and, not just do us as if we are animals.
And the DA says because of the pandemic, they likely won't be able to convene a grand jury until October.
And like I said before, that alone is just, it's crazy. Like I said, the simple fact of the matter is, not only that was the defense of those 2 cops. It's always, it's sad that a person had to lose their life. Well, you could have prevented it. And the lawyer for the other guy was like, I just think this is bullshit. He wasn't running. As you literally see in the video, the man is running. That's all I wanted to there and say, sir, did you not see the video where the man was running from the police? And again, as I've said before, you can never not tell me that a black man running away from you holding a taser is more of a threat to you than an armed white supremacist. There's nothing you can say or do in that situation to where it just amazes me so that they'll try to defend themselves saying, and I hear it. It's funny that you haven't noticed, guys, that a lot of white officers are no longer saying, I fear for my life. You're a police officer with body cameras, with armor, with guns, non-lethal tasers, mace, backup, and everything else in the sun. You're literally a lower standardized military police. And yet, an unarmed black man is the most dangerous thing to you. Right. So again, it's going to be one of those things, like I said before, with each of these cases, cops are being brought up on charges. There needs to be some change. Otherwise, I believe the riots, the protesting, and possible looting will continue. And it's only because people are honestly fed up and tired of it. What did you guys say? We say, Vaughn, God forbid it ever happens. It wasn't a suicide. I personally think it wasn't until we see other facts about it. And then Jason is my reason. Well, yeah, I guess Jason Voorhees being in the woods would also be a good reason not to go in the woods. Batman utility belt. Yeah, pretty much. pretty much what law enforcement has is a Batman utility belt. Everything's short of anything else. But moving right along, guys, just changing gears for a second. I know, like I said, with Juneteenth just passed, I actually think it should be a Juneteenth weekend. I wanted to find a story just about from the minority side of things. Like I said, a lot of businesses themselves are struggling in trying to adjust in this COVID-19 situation. But I found a story which I thought was pretty cool. And like I said, celebrating Juneteenth and really giving some history to it, I just thought the story was cool.
The couple recently reopened their restaurant, Leah and Louise, serving Southern cuisine.
We try to look at the menu and try to curate something that is very intentional, that's rooted in blackness, but something that everybody can understand.
For Juneteenth, they're serving Memphis-style pork ribs and potato salad.
Greg and I want to use this Juneteenth to say that's Freedom Day. We're still fighting.
So we want to say, look, this is who we are. This is where we're from.
Juneteenth recognizes the day enslaved black people were finally freed. During slavery, they preserved African tradition by cooking with what they had available.
The foods of enslaved black people are some of the bedrocks of so-called soul food.
From his kitchen in Harlem, Donovan Woodley runs The Weekender, a meal service delivering gourmet soul food.
You're making each plate and cooking it, and then in the middle of a pandemic, serving it.
Yeah, bringing in the type of food that I make, I think it's a good service to the people around me to feel the things that they felt growing up.
A reminder of a history that he says is often overlooked.
We were the first chefs of America, from when we were enslaved, from us making foods from scrap and creating it into something that can be table-worthy. That's a feat of its own.
Black chefs have historically been underrepresented in the food industry. Last year, only 14% of chefs and head cooks were black.
The time has come. It is long past time for the food of the African diaspora to be celebrated, to appear, and to be acknowledged.
For Woodley, his Juneteenth takeout brunch is a necessary reminder.
That process of feeling joy around people that, unfortunately, during this quarantine time, we haven't gotten a whole bunch of, right?
A joy rooted in history and fellowship. Morgan Radford, NBC News.
And they're absolutely right. It is literally that it's, aside from the culinary arts and then just the impact that African Americans have had about the food they put in, and yes, a lot of it is actual staples. A lot of people, but yeah, I said mac and cheese, turnip greens. Matter of fact, most of the menus of top restaurant chains of chicken, I guess Southern cooking. I mean, if you take Popeyes, you take Kentucky Fried Chicken, you take some dishes from Captain D's, you take a lot of these fast food chains do actually have what was considered African American culinary standards as far as certain dishes and things of that nature. And you can tell because they still haven't figured it out, because let's be honest, they don't have really us up there as far as the kitchen heads. But I just thought that was a cool little tidbit to learn about, just because Juneteenth needs to get more than the recognition it deserves, and I finally hope that we are starting to turn a page on that. I really do, just because, again, so many people don't know about it, and yet this is a wonderful, excellent time to educate and to move people forward on that. What do you say, Vaughn? From the rooter to the tutor? Yeah, that's true. No, the whole Captain D's menu. I don't know, not the whole Captain D's menu, because there was some questionable shit that black people didn't come up with in that. Maybe the new one. If you're talking the older Captain D's menu, okay, I'll give you that. But the newer one, nah. So, the last story I got before I get to our good news segment, guys. A recent Atlanta pastor, mega pastor church, of a mega church, which I shouldn't be surprised, has sat there and put his foot in his mouth because, well, he said this.
Out of sight, out of mind, we're oblivious to it. Yeah, we cannot let this moment pass.
Yeah, you know, Lecrae, it's interesting because I feel like on the inside of the church, we're fighting this historical context you talk about. In other words, we love the blessing of the cross, but we don't love to sit in it and realize this is what God's asking me to do, to die to myself and to live for him, whatever context that's going to look like for me. But I want to flip that upside down, because I think the other side of it is true with our nation's history. We understand the curse that was slavery, white people do, and we say that was bad, but we miss the blessing of slavery, that it actually built up the framework for the world that white people live in and lived in. And so a lot of people call this white privilege, and when you say those two words, it just is like a fuse goes off for a lot of white people, because they don't want somebody telling them to check their privilege. And so I know that you and I both have struggled in these days with, hey, if the phrase is the trip up, let's get over the phrase and let's get down to the heart. Let's get down to what then do you want to call it. And I think maybe a great thing for me is to call it white blessing, that I'm living in the blessing of the curse that happened generationally, that allowed me to grow up in Atlanta. And you know, you're talking about being 57. If you were 57, I can't imagine being that old, Dan, and being 57. But I've said to our church, Lecrae, a few weeks ago, when I was born, the day I was born on Boulevard at Georgia Baptist Hospital in 1958, black people did not have equal rights in this city. Not my grandparents' lifetime or their lifetime, in my lifetime. This is right now, what we're talking about today. And call it what you want, Dan. I think the issue begins with a white person saying, I want to try to put myself in somebody else's shoes. And I find it's far easier to dismiss it all by saying, you know, that's not me, that doesn't reflect me, and I just went through diversity training at my job for the last 4 days, and so that's all we hear. That's not the way I am. But I feel like dismissing just as a response probably is an indication that there's something a little bit bigger under the surface.
Okay, so I played it in its entirety so no one can sit there and say I didn't. Y'all heard what I heard, right? I'm certain. I'm certain y'all heard what I heard, because this fool just sat there and said the blessing of slavery. The blessing. See, here's also with Lecrae, who is a Christian artist. Brother, I lost a little bit of respect for you on that one, because you just heard a white dude turn around there and say, well, I think we might have missed the blessing of slavery. How the fuck did you not go, whoa, 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 whoa? Let me stop you right there. I would have had more respect for Lecrae had he sat there and been like this. Because I'm sorry, hang on a second. Let me replay. Let me get back to that part, because I just want to show this again. Where look at Lecrae's body posture. That's all I'm saying. Just look at it.
And lived in. And so a lot of people call this white privilege, and when you say those two words, it just is like a fuse goes off for a lot of white people, because they don't want somebody telling them to check their privilege. And so I know that you and I both have struggled in these days with, hey, if the phrase is the trip up, let's get over the phrase and let's get down to the heart. Let's get down to what then do look like for me. But I want to flip that upside down, because I think the other side of it is true with our nation's history. We understand the curse that was slavery, white people do, and we say that was bad, but we miss the blessing of slavery, that it actually.
Did this motherfucker just head down his head? Oh. This, okay. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. I want to replay that. But as he sat there and said, I think we missed the blessing of slavery, Lecrae, the black dude, is nodding his head. I lost a little bit of respect for that man. I'm sorry. I've lost a little bit of respect for Lecrae on that. Just for the simple fact of the matter is just that you nodded your head. You didn't raise up. You didn't sit there and stop that man from speaking. You didn't sit there and correct him. You nodded your head. And I'm like, there is not a level of understanding that exists for that man to say that. Especially a white man. I'm sorry. There's not a level out there that he can do that for a black person to sit there and go, oh, I was so mad. I was mad at the white dude, but then again, I expect that because they always speak from an area of superiority, especially in churches, and it makes me even more infuriated that Lecrae, who is outspoken, decided to sit there and nod his head with it. But anyway, that was also last week, and of course this week he does apologize, saying that it was a bad choice of words. But then again, I shouldn't be surprised because it was a conversation with the CEO of Chick-fil-A along with Lecrae, and he tried to sit there. Of course, you guys heard in the video, he did try to change it up, saying about white privilege, but he prefers white blessing. And this is the point. This is the point to where I'm mad at Lecrae. He goes, you have the ability, quote unquote, you have the ability to not think about it. I cannot change my skin tone. I cannot live another day without recognizing my blackness. Dude, you literally sat there and you nodded when this man sat there and said that bullshit. You nodded your head. You didn't stop him. You didn't correct him. You nodded your head. And then you're going to try to sit there and say, well, in that moment, I was processing like, man, what do I do? Which he quoted. He said, yeah, in that moment, I was processing like, man, what do I do? He said, adding that he subsequently expressed his concerns to Giglio, the white guy who said that. Obviously, I'm not okay with changing white privilege to white privilege to white blessing. That is a privilege in and of itself. And of course, Chick-fil-A did not comment. Of course they're not. Yeah. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that bothers me so. Not only, I'm not surprised that a mega pastor decided to sit there and, claim white privilege as a blessing and shit of that nature. I expect that. I expect a black person, when they come across opposition or oppression or things of that nature, to speak out against it. Not to nod your head, not to be like a deer in headlights, and then come back and sit there and say, man, what do I do? What do I do? Everything morality-wise should have been screaming at you, so then go, no, hold up. You ain't about to say that. I mean, I had to go Booker T, but I'm like, tell me you didn't just say that. That's how it should be. But again, Lecrae, I lost respect for you, dude. I mean, to me, that's one of those times where you could have sat there and stopped it. There was a moment where you could have initiated change, and that was it. That was about as big as blinding lights get, and yet you didn't do it. And I'm sorry, but that shit bothers me. And again, like I said, Lecrae can make every excuse up he wants, but I've always sat there and said to this: when your feet are put to the fire, the real you is gonna show. Either you're going to step up or you're going to not say anything at all. But the real you will always show up when your character is tested. So Lecrae, you're full of shit. With that being said, guys, that's all the stories we got. So we're going to go into our feel-good news segment. Lord knows we need one after this one. What I usually do on how the Frack We Got Here, we do talk about a lot of stories about, some of them are doom and gloom. Some of them are just kind of seem like end of the world. And like I said, for this podcast to be done on the weekend, for some of us who don't have to work, for some of us who are traveling during Father's Day, we want to keep it light. We want to keep it happy. Leave you out here on a good note. And also, I did find a couple of stories, and I want to talk about this one because I actually posted this cat at the intro to one of my podcasts. And if you don't remember him, here he is again.
I'm a young black man doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind, every day I'm being hunted as prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough struggle. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live.
Now that kid, 12-year-old Keaton Brendan, was the guy who sung that song a little over I think it's almost been now 3-4 weeks ago. So anyway, that was his song, I Just Want to Live, which was actually written by his mother, and he actually just landed a record deal with Warner Records to release his song as a single, in which the proceeds of the song, which they said would release the song as in honor of Juneteenth, that 100% of the profits will be donated to the NAACP, and that Warner also said with their collaboration with Amazon Music would donate $1 for every stream of the song up until its release, up to $50,000. And I just thought that was cool, just because he hopes to, keep in mind, let's be honest, once you get signed with a record deal, I may not know the insides of that. I'm going to leave that to my friend Trace, because he knows more about the recording industry than I do. But I just like the fact that there is some good that's coming out of that, aside from the fact of that young man's song going viral, that maybe it might open up some doors with him as far as going forward. Because let's be honest, no, everybody forgets Jason Warner, the guy who used to be on Smart Guy, the guy who was on ATL, the guy who was actually the voice of who was the voice of young Simba singing in The Lion King, got started at a very early age. And at the same time, he's also the kid that played Michael in the Jacksons. I know Vaughn was going to tell me that. I had to remember that one. But again, I just think that's a great story, just because the simple fact of the matter is just that it might lead to open up more doors for this cat. Now, I just want to say that's pretty cool. Another story that I have is one that I honestly did not know about. I like to think to myself, when it comes to history, I'm a very big fan of history. It was my favorite subject in school. And in this case, I did not know about Opal Lee. For all those that do know about Opal Lee, I just think it's an amazing story that she has. And like I said, I just wanted to share it.
The 93-year-old activist and lifelong Texan who has campaigned to make June 19th a national holiday for years. Hate she experienced as a young age drove Lee to organize a walk from her home in Fort Worth to the nation's capital in the hopes of getting 1 million signatures on a Juneteenth petition. CBS's Jerika Duncan tonight with her inspiring story.
At 93, take that for the children. Yes, Opal Lee is showing no signs of slowing down.
Yes, put it that way.
During the pandemic, she's been delivering food from her farm to families in need. But it's what she's been doing for years that's gaining momentum, taking steps to make Juneteenth a federal holiday.
Slaves in Texas didn't know they were free until a General Gordon Granger made his way to Galveston with troops to tell slaves they were free. But this is 2.5 years after the emancipation.
African Americans then and now have celebrated June 19th as their Independence Day. To highlight that history, Lee started a walking campaign across the country to raise awareness for Juneteenth.
For people who say slavery happened a long time ago, why is this so important to have a national holiday?
I say that there's still a form of slavery going on. If people don't have enough to eat, it's a form of slavery. And none of us are free until we're all free.
On June 19th, more than 80 years ago, it was a life-changing event for Lee. When she was 13 years old, she says a white mob burned down her family's home. That experience drives her to this day.
You've been working on this for decades, and here you are at 93 years old, still talking about it, still walking in honor of it. What's the lesson there?
I'm gonna keep right on doing this until I know it's a holiday, and I feel it in my bones.
And this time, it just feels different. Jerika Duncan, CBS News.
And I thought that was pretty cool. Like I said, I did not know about Opal. I did not know that, she was one of the ones who were the first people to push Juneteenth as far as a national holiday and has been doing so since her 20s. The woman is 93 and is still an activist, still giving back, still informing, still doing everything. And dang, it makes me feel, I'm thinking to myself, dang, all I'm doing is informing people. She is doing much more than I, and I'm just like, at 93 years old, I hope to be as active as she is, and still informing and still educating. And I just thought that was pretty cool. Like I said, I always love to see actual historic figures like that. And I keep telling people, when it comes to the elderly, people of that age, those are the learning trees you want to sit under. Just because really, they are our history. They are a living library, so to speak. They will tell you everything under the sun that you would like to know about, because knowledge like that, once it's gone, it's gone. It does not come back. And I just, if you have something like that that's in your life that can provide that knowledge to you, hey, sit in the learning tree. Knowledge is free. That's the way I look at it. But that was a terrible ass segue. But aside from that, guys, the last story I got here, because if you know me by now in these podcasts, I am obsessed with lottery stories. I know it's an obsession. Not only because the fact of the matter is that I hope, because I still play lottery, when it's really up there, I do play lottery just to sit there and say, hey, you can't win if you don't play. But I always love these stories of these people and how they get lottery winnings, and especially how they came up to them and what they do with it afterwards. Of course, this story is no different. The winning ticket for the Mega Millions that was at $410 million was won by an Arizona couple because they picked family birthdays, and of course, they found a heads-up penny, and which is so funny as they tell the story. Like I said, I love stories like this just because, well, number one, I understand lottery. I understand the options of lotteries. The odds and things of that nature I get. But I just love the fact that what they said, well, they figured my birthday is next month and my left hand has been itching for 2 weeks, which meant money was coming my way, the wife said in a statement. I also found a shiny new heads-up penny just before I bought our tickets so that I knew I'd be lucky. And of course, the couple says they pleased the money to pay off their mortgage, make some investments, and put aside for the children and grandchildren. And I love what the husband said. I feel lighter now, and it's incredible to know that there will never be another bill that I can't pay. If I could read, that'd be great. But I just love stories like that, just simple fact of the matter. Especially with the wife. My left hand's been itching for 2 weeks. I was going to say, they've got a shot for that. But I just love the fact of, ordinary people, finally changing their lives. And I can't be mad about that, because I know if I won a 410 Mega Millions jackpot, the relief that you don't have to worry about paying things the rest of your life, because I'm just going to be honest. They chose, that was a 410 Mega Million jackpot. I think after taxes, I think they got 317 million, give or take a zero. Which I think after taxes, let's see, 317 after Congress gets their cut, then after taxes, I think it's still over 200 million. But even so, it's over 200 million. Over 200 million is still more than enough. A rational person can't spend 200 million in their lifetime. A rational person. Keep in mind I said rational. But I just love the fact of that there's that feeling of just knowing that money and financial problems are no longer your concern, and I just think that part is cool, just to me. But like I said, I like the fact that the stories, how they come to and what they do afterwards, because you never know. Money never hides anything. It just shows the real you. Now, aside from that, guys, that's really all that I have here. I do thank everybody for watching. I know we ran a little bit long because I was trying to cover 2 weeks. So I do think everybody was watching. The scroll above my head is for my Cash App, guys. So in case you have, if you do want to donate, all the donations that are covered will actually go to equipment and things of that nature, just to make the show better. Just for that nature, if you want to contribute, you can. If you cannot, then the only thing I ask is that let somebody know about the show. Like, share, and subscribe. I don't necessarily say start watch parties, because with watch parties, it starts its own comment field and everything else, and I can't see the comments on the watch party versus what's actually showing live right now. But again, if you want to start a watch party for yourself or you and other people to comment on, that's more than welcome. I just try to cover everybody that responds to me the best way I can. I am not the only cat that has podcasts, and I'll start down the list to be short and sweet about it. I'll start with Big BZA Dot, who is still currently watching, which I thank him for. Currently, Big BZA Dot across all social media platforms has a couple shows of his own. I'll start with the first one, the BST, the Busy Solo Takes, as a informative podcast. That podcast can be informing you about video games, about movies, or trailers, as he loves to show, is the Intercast. I think he done gave that show 3 names by now. First BSTs and Busy Solo Takes in the Intercast. But I'm gonna need you to pick a name, dude, honestly. But yes, but it is an informative show just like mine. He also has a show called Rhythmness. You can reminisce over the rhythm, in which we're overdue, Vaughn, for Rhythmness. We need albums. I need opinions. I need to know what albums you like so I can go ahead and say genocide all of them. Because I do have a tendency of doing that on his show. But again, I like it because he has a different musical spectrum taste than I do. But the whole idea of it all is to turn around and to cry conversation. Because anybody that knows Vaughn, he loves to talk about music. The man is a music aficionado, and he does have some strong opinions about music out there. And of course, I'm the antagonist. I always love to go the other side of things. But again, it's all about good conversation. And what did you say, Vaughn? Sup, buddy? Hey, oh, you tagged yourself. Okay. So anyway, I was wondering why you said sup, buddy. But anyway, but I do love Rhythmness. We are overdue, Vaughn, because, we need one. I know right now you're traveling, and be safe and all that good stuff. But we are overdue for Rhythmness, Negro. Aside from that, he does have Random as Fuck with Uncle Beezy. What is Random as Fuck? Random as Fuck is the pool of ranches we sometimes dip our toes into to take a break from life and have a chuckle. Some bills will make you think. Some bills make you cry. Some bills will still stick with you because they're just that damn funny. And Vaughn always finds a theme with his shows. And dude, I gotta show you a theme that you're gonna love. I gotta remind myself after this podcast, send it to you, because I saw it on YouTube and it was funny as shit. But that's neither here nor there. I'll have to show it to you later. But all of his shows can be found under his Facebook page, which is a Big BZA Dot, or his YouTube at A Big BZA Dot Podcast, or his Twitch channel and his Instagram, also Big BZA Dot, which you can watch all across his platforms. And he also does announce on his Facebook when his shows will be appearing. Our other brother from a different mother, Thomas Reed, aka the Mountain Puncher, who we hope he does a podcast. We are waiting so patiently for him to do a To Be Determined podcast, his fitness podcast, because the man stays in the gym. I wish he would find his way to his phone to do a podcast. But anyway, when he does do his podcast, he does talk about fitness, he does talk about working out, nutritional things, and just gives his own personal testimony. And like I said, if you've seen Thomas Reed on Facebook or his YouTube page, number 2, letter T, letter B, letter D, he does work out quite a lot. But anyway, definitely give him a like, share, and subscribe from there. And finally, my other brother from another brother, Trace Brown, King Eddie Wing. Trace is gonna kick my ass. I cannot talk today. King Eddie Wayne on all social medias. Actually has a few podcasts of his own. The first one's called The Bum Down, which is music, culture, knowledge, and numbers, in which he gives his opinion on the recording industry as well as chart work, who's hot, who's not, an upcoming artist. I usually call him Negro Dominus just because the simple fact of the matter that everybody he has called so far has been coming up and blowing up. He also has a Smoke for Truth podcast in which he gives his opinion on a number of subjects. If you have not seen King Eddie Wayne on Facebook, you really should, because a lot of his stuff are definitely conversation starters. But he does have an unorthodox but unique opinion to the world, and if you're willing to talk to him, then gag nabbit, he's willing to talk to you, because he always wants all the smoke. Trust me, he wants all the smoke. But all of his shows can be found under his handle at King Eddie Wayne across all social medias. As far as yours truly, I do have a few podcasts of my own. Of course, with How the Frack We Got Here is every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. A little bit later tonight, between 7 to 8 p.m. will be the Off Limits podcast, where nothing is off limits. And trust me, we do talk about certain subjects. And I actually want to start my fun series because I know for How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of the heavy stuff. But with everything that's going on, I wanted to turn around and sit there and say, You know what? Because it was brought to me as far as just doing fun stuff, bringing life, bringing some laughter, because that's always been our way of dealing with stress and drama. Is all about the laughter, and that's actually the best way to actually handle that. So we're gonna continue with the fun series, and trust me, I got a fun subject tonight that a lot of people gonna talk about. What do you say, Vaughn? Notice I've said nothing about the mess ups. Yes, because I do it very rarely. I do it very rarely. Yes, Vaughn, I'm that petty. Aside from that, guys, like I said, with my other shows, every Sunday between 7 to 5 will be the Get Bit podcast. It's basically, I like to say that like my show is also about Get Bit, a blurred version of video games, music, television, anime, comics, sports, because we do also cover wrestling, because if Vaughn was still here, he'd have a sound bit about wrestling is still real to us, damn it. Honestly, guys, I always said before, like people always ask, what's the difference between your Get Bit and Vaughn's VST? Vaughn does cover video games, which he does do, and he's even self-proclaimed himself. I go more into the technical side of things as well as to the information, especially with Sony having their showcase the week before, EA Play actually having their showcase just yesterday, and of course with Microsoft coming up, and of course with a lot of people with the E3. That's a whole other subject we're going to cover on Sunday. And also every Tuesday between 7 and 9 is the Burned Out podcast, in which is my storytelling podcast, in which I go over 3 stories from my IT background. Some of them are funny, some of them are cringeworthy, some of them may sound like you because they probably are about you. But it's all about a good entertainment and fun. But all of my shows can be found under my social media handle at William Buchanan. Also, these shows have a Facebook and a YouTube page. So if you just look up on either platform, if you look up How the Frack We Got Here, if you look up The Offense Podcast, if you look up Get Bit, that is GITBIT, and if you look up the Burned Out Podcast, you'll be able to see every video that I've done so far from there. Aside from that, guys, I just want to say thank you for everybody who's watched, who's liked, who's shared, who's subscribed, which I recommend to do just because I always want to do better with these things. And lastly, if you like what I did, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. I am open to all equal criticism because I want to make this platform better for everybody to enjoy. And I know we ran a little bit long today, and I apologize for that, but I promise you, I'll try to keep it around the hour I usually do. But like I said, I just wanted to cover a lot. And again, thank you all for watching. Aside from that, guys, How the Frack We Got Here is all about staying informed, which means that you're not accepting everything at face value. You're literally going in there, finding out the truth for yourself, getting up right sources, reputable sources, and being able to bring somebody else up on the same page as you to inform them to make up their own damn mind. We're not out here to persuade. We're not out here to promote a narrative. We are simply presenting the facts as they are for you to make up your own mind. An informed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, because an uninformed one got us Trump, and that's how the frack we got here. So guys, again, with COVID-19 out there, please stay safe. Please don't do anything that you don't have to do, and things of that nature. If you have to go out, do that. Definitely be safe on that. And again, thank you all those that do have to work, whether you're in the hospitals, whether you're in the post office, whether you're in the UPS, FedEx, things of that nature. If your work is essential, I thank you for your service. Again, guys, be safe. I'm out. Have a great weekend. Peace.